At exactly 3:20 a.m. on August 28, 2025, the night over the eastern Mediterranean was ink black, the kind of darkness where even the horizon disappears into the sea. Two Venezuelan Air Force F-16, A Block 15 sliced through a thin cloud layer at 5,500 feet, their aging Pratt & Whitney engines humming with a tired but determined rhythm. These jets were survivors of the 1980s, updated just enough to keep flying, but nowhere near the level of modern fighters. Their cockpits glowed faintly with old analog dials, flickering CRT displays, and a radar system designed long before digital warfare took over. The lead pilot, Captain Reyes, tapped the glass of his airspeed indicator. It had been sticking lately, rising a few knots slower than reality. "Not tonight," he muttered. His wingman, Lieutenant Correa, kept slightly behind, fighting mild static interference in his radio, another quirk of machines that had seen too many years and not enough upgrades. They weren't carrying modern missiles. No AMRAAMs, no data-linked weapons, just two aging Sidewinders and guns. No Link 16 data link, no modern targeting pods, no ground fusion radar modes. In simple terms, these jets were like showing up to a smartphone hacking contest with an old Nokia. Reliable, durable, but hopelessly outclassed. What made the mission even more unnerving was the silence from ground control. Earlier that night, a brief outage in Venezuela's long-range over-the-horizon radar network forced controllers to rely on patchy satellite relays. Reyes had been warned about this before takeoff. Expect communication delays. Expect incomplete threat data. In the world of modern air combat, flying half-blind was already dangerous. Flying half-blind near a U.S. Navy destroyer, one of the most capable air defense platforms ever built, was something else entirely. Reyes could feel the weight of that reality pressing on him with each mile they closed. There's bravery, he thought. And then there's obligation. Tonight felt like a mixture of both. Ahead of them, lit only by the faint starlight reflected off the waves, moved their target of interest, the USS Sentinel, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer of the U.S. Navy. To an outside observer, it looked like any other warship, angular, sleek, and imposing. But inside, it was closer to a floating supercomputer. Dozens of integrated systems worked together seamlessly. The SPY-1 long-range radar scanning hundreds of miles, SPG-62 fire control radars directing missiles with pinpoint accuracy, SM-2s and ESSMs ready to launch in seconds, electronic warfare suites monitoring the electromagnetic spectrum, and a combat information center staffed by seasoned operators who fought using data instead of dogfights. For the Venezuelan pilots, this was supposed to be a simple presence flight, an assertive pass near the U.S. ship after diplomatic tensions had flared. Nothing provocative, nothing aggressive, just enough to remind the Americans that Venezuela was watching. But as they descended toward 4,000 feet, Reyes felt a chill crawl up his spine. Something wasn't right. The ocean ahead was too still, too quiet, too controlled. Inside the Sentinel, the mood was very different. In the Combat Information Center, the CIC, blue and green icons glowed across the massive screens. The SPY-1 radar had spotted the two F-16s long before they punched through the clouds. Track numbers auto-assigned, speed, altitude, vector, all plotted beautifully. Two bogies, Venezuelan origin, non-IADs supported. An operator reported calmly. "Got it," the tactical action officer replied. "Assign illumination control. Keep SPG-62 on standby." There was no panic, no tension, just routine professionalism. For the U.S. crew, this was like seeing two kids on bicycles approaching a tank. Outdated fighters, no jammers, no BVR missiles, no stealth, no data link. A single destroyer could track over 100 targets simultaneously and engage several at once. Two old fighters posed no real threat. Back in the sky, Reyes's RWR, the radar warning receiver, started chirping. A sharp tone, then another, then a solid beep. Correa's voice came over the radio. "Lead, I'm getting illumination spikes. You feel that? Reyes hesitated. SPY-1 radar tracking usually had a distinct signature. This felt tighter, narrower, more focused. Then came the moment that froze both pilots. A high-pitched, continuous alarm. The SPG-62 fire control radar had locked onto them. This wasn't normal tracking radar. This was the radar the ship used to guide missiles to a kill. When SPG-62 paints you, it's because a missile is seconds away. Reyes's heart hammered. 2-1 to command. We're being locked by fire control. Repeat, fire control. Inside the Sentinel, the fire control officer spoke without emotion. Illumination established. Maintain track. A junior operator beside him whispered to another. They're way too close for those old jets. This is a stupid angle to approach from. Reyes gripped his stick, trying to keep his breathing steady. The old F-16A, without a digital threat library, showed only a rough indicator. No exact mode, no detailed frequency, no modern identification. Just a cockpit screaming danger. Then, without warning, the sky below them flashed. A missile launched. The destroyer's forward vertical launch system erupted with a burst of fire, and an Evolved Sea Sparrow Missile, an ESSM, sped into the night, leaving a white-hot plume behind. Reyes's voice cracked. Missile! Defensive! Defensive! But something was off. The missile wasn't guiding toward them. Not fully. Its flight path arced deliberately wide. This wasn't an attempt to kill. It was a show of force, a controlled escalation, a warning shot. The missile roared upward, then curved into a pre-programmed safe corridor before detonating high above the sea, its bright burst illuminating the waves like lightning. Inside the destroyer, the officers remained stoic. Warning shot complete. Maintain illumination. Await diplomatic channel response. The Venezuelan pilots didn't have the luxury of such calm. Their cockpits erupted with alarms. The older radar displays struggled to interpret the sudden electronic chaos. Correa's INS alignment briefly glitched from the shockwave. Reyes's RWR went blank, then rebooted, a quirk of outdated systems overwhelmed by a modern missile's energy signature. For a terrifying few seconds, they were flying blind. Reyes steadied his hands. We break east on my mark. 3, 2, 1, now! The two F-16 rolled sharply, pulling into a high G-turn that strained their worn airframes. Reyes felt the vibration in his seat. Something in his left wing root didn't like that maneuver. As they accelerated away, the SPG-62 lock disappeared. The alarms quieted. Gradually, the cockpits returned to their usual dim glow. When they finally leveled off at 8,000 feet, Correa exhaled shakily. Lead! What the hell was that? Reyes didn't answer immediately. Part of him was still processing. Part of him was angry. And part of him was thankful they were still alive. Several minutes later, command responded over HF radio. 2-1 flight returned to base. Incident acknowledged. Debrief on arrival. Back on board the Sentinel, the CIC logged the encounter. One officer commented quietly, "They're flying machines older than half our crew. They shouldn't be this close." Another replied, "They know. This was political. But one mistake and we're in a war nobody wants." The lesson wasn't lost on anyone. As the Venezuelan fighters turned toward home, Reyes looked down at his cockpit. The worn switches, the analog dials, the radar struggling to keep a stable picture over sea clutter. He finally said, as much to himself as to command, "We never stood a chance. Not against that ship." And that was the truth. An Aegis destroyer isn't just a ship. It's a moving fortress. A network of sensors, processors, interceptors, and radars all fused into one lethal organism. Its SPY-1 radar sees far beyond anything an old F-16 can detect. Its missiles fly faster, farther, and smarter than anything those jets carry. Even its warning shot, a missile launched with deliberate restraint, was more precise than the F-16's best attack. This incident wasn't a dogfight. It wasn't a near-miss military clash. It was a clear demonstration of how modern naval power and old fighter jets exist in two different eras. The Venezuelan pilots were skilled, professional, and brave, but their machines were simply outmatched. A radar lock nearly triggered an international crisis. A single missile, fired as a warning, showed how close two nations can come to disaster when outdated hardware meets modern systems in a tense political moment. In today's world, one radar tone and one missile launch, intentional or not, can drag two countries to the edge of war in seconds. In the days that followed, analysts across the world dissected every detail of the encounter. Military forums buzzed with speculation. Intelligence agencies quietly compared sensor logs. Diplomatic envoys exchanged carefully worded statements that avoided blame while hinting at responsibility. But for the pilots and sailors involved, no analysis could capture what it felt like in that moment when technology, politics, and human fear collided in a single flash of light over the Mediterranean. Reyes later admitted something privately. The warning shot, terrifying as it was, also saved them. Had the Sentinel chosen not to signal restraint, had a real engagement begun, neither he nor Correa would have had a chance. This wasn't defeat. It was survival, shaped by the thin line between caution and catastrophe that modern militaries must walk every day.